Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the stories shaping South Africa's future. Today's expose explores one of the most electrifying and controversial relationships in the country's recent history: the connection between Vusimuzi, Cat Matlala, the high-flying alleged tender kingpin, and Bheki, the long-serving, equally polarizing former Minister of Police. Their entwined paths have triggered a political earthquake, leading to staggering media coverage, official probes, Twitter storms, and water cooler speculation across the nation. But what really went on between Cat Matlala and Bheki? Today, we peel back the layers, looking at their backgrounds, business dealings, political careers, and the mountain of evidence that's called the line between public safety and corruption into question. From VIP penthouses and frantic phone records to R360 million tenders and courtroom dramas, this is a tale that tests the boundaries of power, influence, and accountability at the heart of the South African state. Stay tuned as we break down who these key figures are, trace the events that set their names ablaze in headlines, and scrutinize how their connection upended trust within the South African police service and the country at large. Vusimuzi. Cat Matlala is not just another flashy tenderpreneur. He is one of the most notorious and enigmatic figures in recent South African criminal and business history. Born around 1976 in Mpumalanga and later rising to prominence in Gauteng, Matlala's early years remain shrouded in mystery, with few public records about his family or educational background. What is clear, however, is that he carved his fortune through government tenders, often navigating the gray swamps of procurement, politics, and criminality. Born in 1952 in rural Umzumba, KwaZulu-Natal, Bheki Kwakhe Hamilton's journey from apartheid oppression to the political summit mirrors both the hopes and contradictions of modern South Africa. An anti-apartheid activist, Bheki spent years imprisoned on Robben Island before entering post-1994 public service, first as a provincial legislator, then as KwaZulu-Natal's influential MEC for Transport, Community Safety, and Liaison. Known for his populist style and fiery speeches, sometimes urging police to shoot to kill, Bheki cultivated an image as a no-nonsense crime fighter, earning the nickname General. How their worlds collided. The SAPS 360 million tender and public outcry. The keystone of the Cele Matlala scandal is the now infamous SAPS 360 million health services tender, a contract meant to provide medical screening and wellness support for nearly 180,000 SAPS personnel. Awarded in June 2024 to Matlala's Medicare 24 Tshwane district, the deal was instantly controversial for several reasons. Alleged procurement irregularities, the bid documents were dogged by signature inconsistencies, raising red flags about forgery and misrepresentation. A key evaluator, former Brigadier Petunia Linono, allegedly recommended the contract to Matlala's company, only to resign from SAPS days later and join Medicare 24, contravening conflict of interest provisions. Such collapses in internal oversight are symptomatic of broader patterns in South African tender scandals. Investigative red flags. The deal unfolded as Matlala's companies were already under multiple investigations. The Hawks and the Special Investigating Unit were probing his alleged role in the Tembisa Hospital procurement saga, with links to murdered whistleblower Babita Deokaran. Despite warnings, SAPS released at least 50 million in payments before the contract was abruptly cancelled, leaving employees, suppliers, and the public in the lurch. Political connections and suspicion of fronting. After the tender's collapse, revelations poured forth that the contract was likely won through a fronting arrangement. According to News 24, Matlala resigned as director and handed the company over to a young placeholder soon after the money was paid, a classic symptom of fraudulent procurement. Blurring of business and political connections. The contract was inked only a week after Bheki stepped down as Minister of Police, raising questions about influence, conflicted interests, and the Old Boys Club of South African procurement. The smoking gun phone records and Bheki's frantic attempts to contact Matlala. Perhaps the most dramatic and publicly digestible evidence of a cozy or compromised relationship between Bheki and Matlala came in winter 2025 when phone records surfaced showing over 100 calls and messages exchanged between the two men, contradicting Bheki's repeated denials of any close relationship. Key facts from the phone records. On 9th May 2025, the day before SAPS finally pulled the plug on Matlala's contract, Bheki made at least 10 calls to Matlala, none of which were answered. The two had a long-standing record of communication, with over 100 calls and texts over several months. These calls came at the very moment Matlala was threatening to take the SAPS to court and amid growing questions about the legitimacy of his $360 million contract. Instead of owning up to a close or business relationship, Bheki explained that he was only trying to arrange a meeting, with Matlala wanting to see him in Durban. When pressed, Bheki grew defensive, telling reporters, "I know him, but friends, no, you are not a commission," before abruptly ending interviews. Despite the phone data, Bheki stuck to a narrative of coincidental proximity, not collusion. Bheki stays at Matlala's luxury penthouse. Phone records were only the start. Hotel records revealed that Bheki had stayed twice in Matlala's luxury penthouse suite at the capital Menlyn, Maine, one of Pretoria's poshest addresses. The reservations were arranged by Matlala himself, who described Bheki to the hotel as his friend and business partner. While Bheki later admitted staying in the apartment, he denied receiving any benefit or having business dealings with the accused tenderpreneur. Critics and opposition parties, however, seized on this detail as evidence of gratuities, special favors, and improper access for those seeking state contracts. Public and political fallout. The scandal over Bheki and Matlala's relationship did not play out quietly. Instead, it tore through social media, parliament, and mainstream news, inspiring memes, trending hashtags, heated radio talk show debates, and, crucially, calls for high-level judicial intervention. What does the scandal really mean? The fallout from the Bheki-Matlala saga extends far beyond personal reputations or the fate of one dubious contract. It raises fundamental questions about the vulnerability of South African public procurement and the ability of the state to police itself when tenderpreneurs and political figures grow too close. Themes emerging from the scandal. Institutional capture. The SAPS Medicare 24 scandal echoes prior state capture cycles, as seen with the Gupta family or Jackie Cele. It highlights how procurement, when repeatedly abused, becomes a golden highway for criminal wealth and influence to seep into the state's most vital institutions. Breakdown in oversight. The formal mechanisms meant to prevent conflicts of interest or collusion, like the requirement for auditors, public procurement rules, and post-tender transparency, are repeatedly circumvented when insiders, revolving door officials, are able to cross from oversight to private enrichment with near impunity. Public disgust and erosion of trust, reactions on. The street, the radio, and social media reflect an exhaustion with official explanations and the deep suspicion that the law does not apply to the powerful. Every time a tenderpreneur is pictured in a Rolls-Royce while staff, suppliers, and the police station down the street go unpaid, that sense of injustice deepens. Urgency for real reform. The case has led to rapid legislative and policy action, with President Ramaphosa signing a Public Procurement Act meant to standardize, tighten, and centralize accountability, and with renewed debate over criminal penalties and public registries for blacklisted companies and directors. Could this be a turning point? While history would caution us that state corruption can be remarkably sticky, the breadth and depth of this scandal make it an acid test for police leadership, the new procurement law, and the ability of the criminal justice system to treat even the powerful as equals before the law. Let us reflect and ask open questions, as we wrap up this deep dive, keep these questions in mind. How close is too close when it comes to officials and those bidding to supply the state? Is it possible to ever fully reform tender practices in a system designed to serve both social equity and strict value for money? Will the new inquiries and oversight mechanisms bring real change, or will the system find ways to perpetuate the old status quo? One thing is certain, South Africa is watching the outcome of the Matlala trial and the inquiry into Bheki and SAPS leadership closer than perhaps any public corruption case since the days of the Cele scandal and the Zondo Commission. If you found today's episode illuminating, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. What's your take? Do you believe the explanations given by Bheki? What reforms do you think are needed to prevent future procurement scandals? Let us know below and join us next time as we continue to chase the stories that matter most in building a fairer, more accountable South Africa. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, and never stop asking the hard questions. Skybridge checking out. Bye.